job description, really reading through the job description to capture some of those keywords and qualifications, and making sure your resume is close to perfection before you submit a resume. And we, like to provide coaching in between, helping students understand how to follow up with employers, and not just about, clicking a button and applying for this job and expecting to hear an answer from them. It's also about making those meaningful connections on either LinkedIn, or if there's any networking event that you can go to where the employer that you want to be hired from is present. So making those connections and really, utilizing your network to really elevate your job search and application process to find the right job for you. And another thing about Big Interview is again, the interview practice tool. So you can record yourself, and the AI tool will analyze your recording, talk to you about how many ums you have, what's your pace like, what's your background lighting like. So all these different kinds of things that sometimes a human eye might miss out on. And it will also give you feedback about some of the power words you should be using for a certain question. So we can customize the questions however we think would be appropriate for you, or you can also just go through questions that are already generated per industry or per job. So let's say if you wanted to apply for an English professor job, there's probably a practice set out there, a Big Interview, where you can go through some questions to prepare yourself for an interview like that. So those are, helping students feel empowered to practice on their own, utilizing AI, and honing those skills to really land a job that you want to get. So we're really excited to be utilizing these tools and introducing them to our students. But of course, there's nothing more, important than actually connecting with, an actual person or professional with experience, and can give you a little bit more perspective. So we always encourage students to come in and meet with us at least once, so that we can know who you are and how we can help you out personally to, provide you with the best coaching we can give you. So these are some things that we love to do apart from hosting these workshops and events. And there are a lot of other things that are coming up at the current Life Design Center, such as, the on-campus job fair that's going to happen. We'll also be doing a major minor expo this week. So a lot of things happening. So if you want to be part of that, just reach out to us, and we can make sure we are bringing you in back to campus. But thanks. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Yeji. Does anybody have any questions? All right, well, if you get a chance, stop by the center. They have just a ton of valuable resources, and it'll be worth your while for sure. Okay, we are moving on to, we always like to invite somebody from the community, and tonight we have another alum who's kind of centering in on giving us some information about her organization, and we're going to hear from Audra Picknick tonight. She is the executive director of the Art Experience in Pontiac. She's hosted a couple of different interns for us, and just does an amazing job running the center. And I'm sure she'll have some good advice for you tonight as well.
And we want to just also say Audra was herself an English intern who then went on to become the executive director at the Art Experience. I just had to plug that.
It is true. Yes. So, yeah, and Annie, you were my internship coordinator, and I was an English grad or student in graduating in 2012, but English was my second major. So I I first graduated in 2002 with a art history degree, and I went back to school thinking I would be a teacher, and decided that I didn't want to choose teaching young people or older people. And I liked all ages of people. And so I just stuck with my English degree. At that time, you needed to have a little bit more of a basic degree to be able to get a teaching certificate. And teaching was always my fallback thing. But English managed to just be my, I don't know. I fell in love with it. I'm a self-proclaimed word nerd. And I saw the art experience as an internship opportunity. And on a day where I actually was fired by email, um, from a translation company. So that was really interesting. And just some sort of universe kind of message. But the first day that I walked in the studio, I knew I was home. Um, there, yeah, I guess like that first day, I had saved the website. There was a bunch of art therapists who were working, and I think there's just all of these different skills that really pull from the English degree. And there's a way that there is a synthesis that can happen across different like platforms, and you can read between the lines in a certain way and see where people need more help, or there's a communication thing that needs to happen. Our community art and art therapy studio, the art experience, was founded like 30 years ago by art therapy students, and we welcome the entire community to our facility. And that means people of all ages, people of all artistic abilities, people of all abilities. Those with cognitive or physical disabilities are welcome in our space, and we adapt to meet their needs. And people from all different backgrounds too. So being able to hold space for people's experiences in all different sorts of ways is something I think that English majors are really, not to be biased or anything, good at, because you can read between the lines and you're shown, you've explored all of these different narratives from all different kinds of cultures and perspectives and things like that. And what's really amazing, I think, too, is that you can use these skills in all different sorts of ways. So like when I was an intern, I was able to fix the website and do a lot of content kind of stuff, and marketing for the studio. And then I also, we managed to get some email. This was the first time that everybody was using their own Gmail account and not just one email address. So I know Yuji was talking, if I said that correctly, I'm sorry. But like how these AI or corporations are going through like 200 or hundreds of resumes, that we're very Luddite over at the art experience. It was a big deal to move to Gmail in 2015, right? And so we also do we have to raise funds, right, for a nonprofit organization. So there's grant writing. That was one of my real interests when I first started at the studio. And for those of you who might be interested in that, it's challenging. I found it to be challenging to not know a whole bunch about the organization in order to be able to write about it. So there's a lot of history that goes with it. But if you're given the task of doing other things, like you'll be able to pick it up and understand it for where it is that you are interested in going. So along with the grant writing, it is writing year-end appeals and different fundraising campaign literature. There is marketing and social media kind of stuff. And as I talk about all of this, these are all things that I would love to have. people helping me do. So if you're interested, please reach out. And I know for me, when I was looking at resumes, as I was kind of preparing my thoughts or whatever for this, this evening's event here, I know I'm looking at detail on a resume, and that words aren't misspelled. Especially if I'm looking for someone who's writing content for a website and things like that. And also, I've had some very interesting resumes because I'm the one who looks at them all. Please also don't make it 7 pages, and tell me your 4 month long jobs. Yeah, that's not. I would recommend not doing that. But yeah, so I don't know. I guess that's really, I would love to have you guys in the studio, if not just to see it and make something, bring a friend. We have this program called Open Studio. It's $6. You can use all of our art materials in the studio, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights, and Sunday afternoons. So it's a nice way to, I don't know, get out of your regular day-to-day stuff and just be adventurous and create something.
I can't recommend this highly enough, because the art experience is so fun, you guys. You can just go there, you can make things. I was on the board for so many years ago, but yeah, it's lovely. Obviously, Audra is lovely. So anybody who's interested, and especially remember, nonprofits are big, right? And if you get experience in a nonprofit, that is transferable to so many different fields. So again, this is one of our people. So this is a really friendly place to begin if you have not done a lot on the job market and you're interested in doing so. Thank you so much, Audra.
Oh, you're welcome. And the only other thing too is that when I'm looking for an internship who's working more directly with me instead of like an art therapy intern or an art studio kind of intern, I'm looking for a writing sample. I don't have anything specific too that I ask for other than a writing sample. So that's kind of part of the I guess the game too, to see what it is that you're sending me. Yeah, just to get to know you point. So there.
Yeah, that's important. What you write can help you with your next job. It's so important. All right. Well, thank you again. That was terrific. And now I'd like to introduce, I'm just going in order that they responded to me. So Brian Bishop, who is a clinical mental health counselor, graduated from the OU English STEP program in 2002, taught as an English teacher for 15 years, came back, got an MA in 2008, and then I think you went to Wayne State, Brian, is that right, for your psych?
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
Yeah. Well, please take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Annie, and thank you for hosting this event this evening. Yeah, I have had several wonderful experiences at OU, specifically with the English department, obviously. As an undergrad, I went through the STEP program, the Secondary Teacher Education Program. And at that time, that involved obviously many courses in the English department, along with courses through the College of Ed, and it culminated in a year-long internship. So I was placed at Lake Orion High School in Northern Oakland County, where I student taught for a year, and was fortunate at the end of that year that there was a couple of retirements in the department that I was student teaching in, and I was fortunate to be hired by that same district the next year. My year-long internship was maybe the best interview experience that I could have had, so to speak. And I taught in that building for 15 years, had a fantastic experience. And I think probably 5 or 6 years into my teaching career, I decided to return to OU and began working on a master's in English. And hands down, that was the most extraordinary experience I think I will ever have. Because I was able to return to spend time with some of the professors that I'd worked with as an undergrad and be in a completely different environment where I was with classmates of really pretty amazing caliber. And as a English teacher, I'd always thought about myself as more of a blue collar kind of English teacher than a white collar, because I wasn't an advanced English student when I was going through high school myself. So really enjoyed the master's program because I was with some really accomplished and successful graduate students who were with me, and just really loved what the English department had to offer there. So earned my master's through OU, and finished teaching about 15 years, and decided that either I teach for another 15 or maybe I shift my career a bit. And so I took a risk once I turned 40 and returned to school, this time at Wayne State, and earned a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. So I resigned from my teaching role and have been working as a mental health counselor for children, teens, and adults ever since then. So my early English education has taken me on a bit of a circuitous route, but I can't imagine that it would have brought me to any other place. I think this is kind of where I'm supposed to be, I believe.
Yeah, and what was also really fun is, Brian, we knew each other when you were doing your master's here. And then I was at the bookstore, Barnes and Noble up in Rochester Hills, and there you were. You were actually, just out of love, also working a couple days, I think, a week.
Yeah.
And so we just happened to run into each other. And I was just like, oh my God, because you were just such a delight to be with in the classroom. And then you were just glowing with your excitement about your new career. And I just wanted to bring you in because we don't usually bring a whole lot of teachers, because everyone knows that you can be a teacher. But I thought that your experience was really instructive, that you can take the work that you did as an English student and like walk right into a program and then walk right into a new job.
Yeah, and I will say that if you're at all interested in mental health eventually to work in at some point in your career, that the stories that we tell ourselves, literally the narratives that we as individuals craft about our lives and experiences that we have had, those are very instrumental in terms of whether and how a person maybe seeks mental health care, or how a person like one of you as students decides to maybe pursue an advanced degree in psychology or counseling later on in your careers, and being mindful of how a story impacts how we think about development. I mean, we read about characters, but characters in many ways represent actual real people, or can, and we very much have our own stories, and they shape our mental health, both positively and in some cases negatively. So there's a lot of overlap, I will say, between composition, literature, the ability to kind of analyze and think critically, and then express yourself well in writing, both in in the language arts, but then also in other areas of the social sciences, in this case, kind of mental health care.
Yeah, it's such a big field. It's getting bigger and bigger and more important. So I think it's a really smart pairing. And again, it's interesting because Audra also does this kind of pairing at the Art Experience, which works with folks, and again is also very narrative driven, I would think. So interesting. Okay. Were you done, Brian?
Sure, unless anybody has any questions, I'm happy to field. Otherwise, yeah.
We'll do the questions at the end. So I'm going to move to Kiana Gabriel, who is a project manager and graduated from OU in 2021. And I forgot to write down the title of your workplace, Kiana. So you can pinch hit that.
I work at Star 7, which is a language service company, but I don't really have an extensive work background since I graduated just a couple of years ago. So I'll just, I guess, touch on how I got into the workforce after I graduated. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my English degree after graduating. And I actually have, I double majored, so I also have a bachelor's in German language and literature, which is kind of how I got into the language sphere sort of things. But I, through Handshake, I actually found the company that I work at now, which was a good resource for me. I don't know if it's everyone uses it very much, but it's definitely worth making an account and looking around on. I had someone actually reach out to me from Star 7 and encourage me to apply there, which is kind of how our team likes to recruit for new positions, because we hire a lot of, when there are open positions for entry level, a lot of fresh graduates, and they like OU graduates specifically. So that's how I got started, and they specifically told me that they like hiring English majors, but also language majors. So I had, I guess, the best of both of what they were looking for, because of just like the soft skills that come with being an English major, I think can apply to a lot of different fields. So it's been a really good experience just gaining general experience in the workforce and learning how things work. I was really nervous when I got into things because I had no idea after the interview process really what I was walking into, because I had never worked in a professional setting before, but they felt that my skill set with my background would allow me to basically learn everything that I needed to. So they weren't worried about that. And then they had all of the training. So I was nervous about it, but everything has gone really well. And I've switched departments since I started. So now I work a little bit in the HR sphere as well. I actually do some hiring for our company. We work with a lot of language professionals. So I have a little bit of experience on the interviewee and or interviewer and interviewee end. So in general, I'd say just things that, looking back on it, were helpful for me was probably keeping an open mind and looking. I didn't know what kind of like job titles or spheres to look for. So again, really those skills can be transferable to a lot of things. So keep an open mind when looking maybe at what positions are near you or what companies, and how you could apply your skills to the job listings. And then I think from my experience interviewing and also interviewing both internal team members and like contractors and things we work for, when we interview a lot of fresh graduates, it's okay to be nervous on the interview. We know that I was nervous. I know a lot of the people I interview are probably nervous, and it's not a bad thing. Just take your time, and slow down a little. Try to be a little bit thoughtful and precise. If you need to take a moment to think about something, to answer a question, that's totally fine. If you need to ask the interviewer to maybe repeat a question or clarify, it's a good sign, and it's better to kind of clarify and make sure that you've answered things or that you didn't miss something than just nervously slide past something. Yeah, so hopefully that's a little helpful. That's probably what I was most nervous about when applying to places.
That is so helpful, because you are pointing to how useful it is to participate in class, right? And to practice your oral communication skills. It's not something that's just to suck up to your teachers, she says. Great. Thank you so much, Kiana. All right. And so I'm going to turn now to Daniel Towner Brengel. And please let me know if I didn't pronounce that right, who is the
You got
director.
it.
Thank you. Who's the director of academic success at Macomb County, Macomb Community College. Daniel graduated from OU with a BA in 2015 and then with an MA in 2017. Welcome.
Thanks, Annie. And I also just want to thank the OU English department for inviting me back. It's great to see some familiar faces. It's funny because Rachel and I are actually working on a research project together now. So then we get to see each other to work on that tomorrow. So I'll get to see her again then. But I have, so many great memories of my time at OU, both studying there and also working there. For a while, I was driving by OU on my way to work every day, and it was just such a feeling of melancholy. It was like, oh, I wish I was back. But to tell you, I would just echo what folks have said so far about being flexible and keeping an open mind and finding ways that your skills can transfer into areas that you might not expect. I guess I could say I'm the poster child of changing my mind and changing courses. I was originally going into musical theater when I was a young adult, and then I joined the workforce. Ended up eventually going back to school to get what I thought was going to be secondary ed with a double major in music at OU. That changed too. I ended up graduating with a BA in English with a minor in German, a minor in music, and teaching English as a second language certificate. It took me 13 years to get my bachelor's, but I did it. And upon graduating, I was in a situation where I had to kind of figure out what I was going to do, because the plan all along in that portion of my life had been to teach in junior high and high school. But since I didn't end up finishing up the STEP program, I had to think of something else. That's why I got the TESOL certification. And thankfully, I had some great professors and advisors who gave me suggestions about what I should do since I wasn't going to have that teaching certificate, and how my opportunities might have been not what I thought they were going to be. So I was able to get some jobs right out with my bachelor's where I was teaching. I think, Kiana, actually, I worked for your company when it had a different name. I worked for Tech World Solutions. Isn't that the same company?
That's what our name used to be.
Yes.
Well, after I joined, they got acquired by a larger company. But
okay, yeah. So I was one of those language professionals then. I was one of the English teachers who then mostly taught expats who were working in the automotive industry here in the Metro Detroit area. I would go to their offices or their homes and tutor pretty much, which was a great way to use the skills I developed as a student employee when I was at OU, because I worked at the OU Writing Center. And also around that time, the folks that I was learning with from Oakland were advising me that it would be a good idea to go right in to get my master's right away so that I would have better opportunities for teaching. So I did that. I, worked a few freelance jobs and worked at Tech World, and also did a graduate assistantship at Oakland in the linguistics department while I got my master's degree in linguistics. That led to a job at OU as an adjunct instructor, teaching ESL and linguistics and education, which was amazing. And I had some colleagues at Oakland who also got me some connections at Macomb Community College, where I started teaching there as well. If you are someone who's going to be going into the adjunct gig, I just want to tell you, be ready to work 7 days a week. Because that's what you're going to be doing. But then also be ready to maybe have to find other work during the summers, because the first year or two of adjuncting was pretty steady. But then I started developing this pattern of losing all my teaching contracts every summer. Not losing, but not getting them, like others with more seniority or who were full-time faculty would get the teaching positions. Luckily, I eventually got a full-time position at Oakland, and I continued teaching ESL at Oakland in a full-time role until COVID. COVID changed everything, as we all know. And I had to do another career pivot as a result of COVID. And so now I am in Learning Center Administration. I was a coordinator of the Writing Center at Madonna University for almost 2 years in between there, while I was still teaching as an adjunct at Oakland and Madonna. And then now being at I can't even remember where I work anymore. Being at Macomb Community College, it's definitely not where I saw myself. You know, I was thinking that I was going to be going into finding a way to a full-time faculty track. And, you know, that might be in my future still. I still want to get a PhD at some point. But I never would have seen myself as being in charge of a multi-campus department with, I think I have 95 employees now. So I have to deal with budgets and interviews and supervising full-timers and part-timers and serving on committees with other administrators at Macomb. I keep wanting to say Oakland because this is an Oakland group. Grant writing, also writing lots of rationales, talking with vendors. These are things I never really would have seen in my future, but having the foundation as an English major, it helps with problem solving and being argumentative in a good way, but then also a bridge builder. I see myself as a bridge builder between administration and faculty because I've been on both sides of the table, or whatever metaphor you want to use there. So I guess to say it at the end, it would just be to keep your options open and to be adaptable, because you never know where life is going to take you.
Wow, that is fascinating, Daniel. Thank you so much. And I just learned a whole lot that I did not know until this presentation. So that was terrific. All right, and now we are going to Suzanne Honda. Suzanne graduated with creative writing as her major in 2017. She is now program development coordinator for Inside Out Literary Arts.
Yeah, thanks, Annie. And thank you, everybody, for having me. It's so fascinating to hear career paths. I remember being in university and like it was so overwhelming. So if you are feeling overwhelmed right now, know that like on the other end of this, we all came out, we all found jobs. The jobs keep happening. We keep building our skills. I won't dwell too much on this, but I actually, when I went to OU, I was a bit of an older student and I was teaching as a preschool teacher, which I think was super important in that it helped me build a lot of skills that were transferable into my English degree as well, and as well as the role that I have right now, which is really learning how to synthesize big ideas into small, like digestible bits. And I think that that's something, as I was listening to everyone, I kept thinking like, that is what I do all day right now. And what I learned from also like writing all of those essays, reading all of those books, when you have to summarize things and come back and say, what's the big picture? What's the small picture? That might feel at times tedious, but actually I use it all of the time because it's a communication skill. It's something that, I'll back up and tell you that my job right now is creating community partnerships. Inside Out Literary Arts is, we're based in Wayne State's campus, but we work with Detroit Public Schools, Oak Park Schools, River Rouge, mostly surrounding community schools surrounding Detroit. We teach poetry in those schools, but I also work with our community partners. So I teach, I've taught everyone from 8 years old to 88 years old. And a lot of that has been, again, those like, how do I synthesize ideas? How do I take texts and curriculums and make them adaptable for a variety of different people, ages, demographics, personalities, characteristics. But I started at this job as just a contract writer. I was just getting paid 1 day a week to go into an elementary school and just teach poetry, which felt like a dream to me. And then I continued working my way through the organization. I got a fellowship. And so they hired me on for a 2-year contract as a fellow, which those grant writing skills, again, they come into play, being able to talk about who you are, what you find interesting, being able to know when to use the big buzzwords and when to just be authentically yourself. A lot of that comes with practice, but that I found was my English background, my creative writing background was so helpful in just like, how do I talk about this thing? Okay, I have all these ideas, but how do I articulate them? Again, how do I synthesize all of this? And so I got that fellowship. They paid me to be an artist and a teacher. And then I got hired in full time at the nonprofit, permanent, like non-contract, just permanent staff. And so now what I do is I help spearhead a program in partnership with the Detroit Zoo. We had teens going to the zoo and other locations all around the city writing nature poetry. I wrote the curriculum for that for an 8-week course that was between the two organizations. I've created a intergenerational curriculum with the Hannon Center downtown, which works with older adults. All of these sort of things, they're the kind of big, they feel to me like the kind of big projects that I loved doing when I was in college, which was like, I get to dream, I get to have these ideas, I get to pull all of these things, all these research pieces, I get to read all these books and these articles and put them all together and mix them around. I loved doing that. I was definitely like, this is so fun. Bring on the research projects, bring on the big capstone piece. And my inner nerd is showing, but it really has served me, again, like throughout my career, being able to take many disparate things. I think that's one of the beauties of being an English major too, is with language being your vehicle, you can take and process things and then sort of turn them around and present them to other people, whether that's in marketing, whether that is as a teacher, whether you're doing it in a grant, whether you're just writing an email, or like part of my job also is contracting out other people and writing up contracts and how do I, build in this language. All of that came from just writing a lot and reading a lot and thinking a lot. And so I know those can feel sort of like nebulous skills, but really they're so necessary. And I think to bounce, and I apologize, I don't remember who said this, but to bounce off of what somebody else said, like really just talking, building bridges, understanding how to read interactions with people, those kinds of things, like participating in class, if you have workshops, if you're in the creative writing department, or if you're in the English department and you're just presenting or what have you, having a discussion about a novel that you read or a piece of work that you read, those kinds of open conversations are also really important in my work. That when you're working on a team, I have a pretty small team of people that I work with. There's like 12 of us. Having those kinds of communication skills and interpersonal skills are like, they're so important and so necessary, because a lot of English jobs that we don't exist just in the spreadsheet. We have to work with other people. We have to talk with other people. Even if we're working on a spreadsheet, we're still working with people in the room. We have different kind of big brain energy. So yeah, I feel very lucky to have been at OU and to be back here with you all. And yeah.
Oh, that was lovely. Okay, well, we have time for questions to Audra, Brian, Kiana, Daniel, and Suzanne. Does anybody want to ask anything? And remember that too, asking questions helps to build your skill set. Dun, dun, dun. On the other hand, of course, everyone was so articulate, and it may be that you're just absorbing all this information and don't at this point have questions for anyone on that. But if you,
sorry,
please.
can
Anyone?
you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, right. But just joined the creative writing. I just changed my creative writing, and I'm really curious on like what like something you guys are really looking for, because most of my experience is not really in the writing field. Much of it is in like sales and other things like that. So is there like advice to give me, like for any of you guys on the call, like that's like on what it would be, what can make my resume stand out as far as that.
You were cutting in and out a little bit, Caitlin. So I'm wondering if you would be willing to write that up in the chat so that we can better address your question. And in the meantime, I will read aloud Talia. I don't know if I pronounced that right. If not, my apologies. But Talia said, how do you deal with knowing that you have the skills talked about, but lack the experience the job market is looking for?
I can jump in here. I had some really wise advice from a former professor at OU, actually, who said, just say yes until you have to start saying no, by which I mean, I would say be open and try things that you might think fall outside of your skill set. Like working as a preschool teacher, right? That was sort of, my friend was like, this place down the road is hiring and I really needed a job. But I think that having, like, because a lot of these skills are so transferable, there's room for you to build other skills as well. And then you just keep building your toolkit. So every job that you go to, even if you only stay somewhere for 6 months, you might stay there for 6 months and learn how to work social media really well. You might learn like how timetables work. You might learn something that's very, very trade specific that you never know how the jobs you have are going to influence you. But I really believe that nothing is wasted, even if it's just personal growth of like, I know that I can't work in this type of environment, or I know that I need this sort of flexibility in my life. I would say don't get discouraged, even though it is discouraging, though it's impossible, but stay open. You never know what roads where they're gonna lead.
Just add that that you need to apply. You shouldn't not apply because you don't feel that you have recognized skills. A number of, I've been doing this event for a long time, and a lot of students said, you know, I kind of just, I'm sorry, alumni, they said, well, I just kind of thought, well, I'll try this. And then once, if you can get an interview as an English major, you will be persuasive. They will just say, oh my God, this person knows so many things. And as Kiana said, then they'll just train me, even though I might be nervous, even though I don't know how to do this specific job. They will suss out that you have a lot of these skills, and they will help you to fit the job.
Can I add one more suggestion to that as well? My other thing that I would add is don't discredit or forget about non-employment experience. So about a year or so ago, I hired a recent graduate from OU as a writing tutor who didn't have any writing tutoring experience, because they had experience in a group editing atmosphere. I think they were involved with the student newspaper. And so this individual was able to demonstrate in their resume and in the interview that they did have the skills I was looking for, even though they had never worked as a tutor.
That's wonderful. And everyone has experiences that they can draw on, for example, in retail, etc. Those things really do make a difference. Okay, so Caitlin says, she is currently a philosophy major and a creative writing minor. I am looking to transition to being a writer. I want to know what would make my resume stand out, as my experience is in sales and retail. And obviously you are going to have a standout resume once you graduate with, you know, a degree. But does anyone want to pick this up? So I think one thing I would say, Caitlin, is that if you want to be a writer, it might be a very good idea. I think I heard you say that you were thinking about changing majors. I think it's useful. I think and Suzanne's nodding, so I'm going to pass this over to Suzanne.
I will just I don't want to take up all the space, but I'm also a writer. So I feel this particular struggle, and I would say that my advice to you, and I feel like Audra mentioned this before, is first of all, have a couple of good writing samples. But also I know OU has a student, like a lit mag. I know that they've got to have a newspaper. I didn't have anything to do with the newspaper when I was there. I don't know what that process looks like. But I would say if you want writing samples there, or if you want to build those skills as a writer and have them on your resume, that's one of those things that Daniel was talking about that might fall outside of necessarily like paid employment, but you could look into getting published, or you could look into, and it can start with just like a campus publication, but just having places where your work has been recognized and accepted. That will give you that credibility that you're looking for, so that when you put that on your resume, then someone can be like, tell me a little bit about this. I see that you've got these interesting articles you've published, or I see that you worked on this project, and you were doing it while you were also working, at Cold Stone. Tell me about that. What was that balance like? Or why did you go in this direction? What are your interests, here? So that would be my advice.
Yeah, that is so smart. And I will just add that, Caitlin, as a creative writing major, for example, we have a class that is devoted to publishing a literary journal where you become one of the editors. So that's something that you can immediately go, I am an editor, at the Oakland Arts Review, which is one of the top reviews, literary journals, undergraduate literary journals in the country now. So that's a great thing. And then you can also, for example, in workshops, I ask students to submit to literary journals as part of the class. And that's something that will help you to get experience in exactly what you crave and want to have to demonstrate that you are a writer. You are a writer, but you have to start to sort of put out feelers out in the world and start to build your community, which Suzanne did in our writing classes, right? And which my current students do all the time. They network together. They create outside workshops, and these are all things that are really important. And as Suzanne said, literary journals also take interns to be readers. And so students from our program have gone on to intern at Dzank, for example, which is a small press in Ann Arbor. So there's lots of ways that we can help you to build up your writing portfolio. And so again, that's something that we do in our classes, which is part of it, again, kind of why you might want to be check out maybe doing a double major, for example. I think that's a really smart thing. But at any rate, I'll yield the mic to anyone else who wants to add.
I'll just add that I actually have never gotten a job with a resume. It's always been somebody I've met who's like, hey, I got this opportunity. All right, that sounds great. And so, and it has and I think in those like creative roles, like, there is no real like title that you can make as your goal, maybe. I know I was surrounded by computer science majors and engineers, and they knew from birth that they were going to be these types of people. And I had just so many different interests and all of that kind of stuff. And so I've worked in museums as a presenter. My first job out of college with my art history degree was a marketing and like sales associate at a new community, like for new homes and single family homes. I taught English as a foreign language for a little bit too, after I had lived in Germany for a year and came back, and I was like, I loved my German teacher in Germany. I can be an American ambassador for people who are living here, and yeah, and so like the art experience came around, and then when I was like an executive director, like, oh, that's a great title, I guess, that can be it. But because I had worked at that building company, like I am familiar with blueprints, and the art experience is building a brand new studio from the ground up. And so I am like, I understand all these blueprints now, and had no idea I could, at one point apply that. I worked at Lush, the handmade cosmetic place. And when I worked at this, when I came into the studio, like, okay, guys, we need to rotate our paint around. So we're not using all the new ones first. We're using the old ones first, get rid of those, like the inventory kind of stuff. It really, now I guess it took like 14, 15 years from my first degree to kind of collect all of that experience and have it be like a thing, I guess, a recognizable thing that other people had, when they were younger. And yeah, and I don't know, like it was a real dicey time, and like just what am I, who am I, kind of stuff. But it's out there. So yeah, don't give up.
That was a terrific response. Anyone else want to add? You look like you want to say something, Daniel.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, so Courtney asked, I know Handshake is a good resource, but does anyone have any other sites that they recommend for this type of field? And both Rachel and I immediately said internships, because that is, I think, a great way of building a network here where you live. And you have to realize that every class you're in is part of your network building experience. And I don't mean to do this in a cynical way. I just mean to realize that your fellow classmates are your friends who might be able to go, oh, I have something that would be a good fit for you. So you have to be open. Everyone has recommended that to be open and not to, you don't know where you'll go, as people have said, right? And you just kind of have to do a little surfing. You have to trust yourself. You have to believe that you have a lot of great skills that the workforce needs. So you want to trust yourself. You want to talk to people. Whenever somebody says, oh, you can email me if you have a question, you do that. Okay, that's me being a little bit crazy. I know it works better in person than it does on Zoom, but anyway, it's just my trademark. Excited because you do that. Okay, you go ahead, Suzanne.
I don't want to interrupt you, Annie, just at some point. Go ahead. Okay. I just wanted to note that social media is your friend too. It's 2024. My organization recently hired on a new position, and the way that they announced it is we announced it on our social media. Obviously, we had links to an actual place to submit your resume. We had rounds of interviews and all of those things. But I think particularly in Audra, I don't know if maybe you have found this as well, but if you're interested in working in like an arts organization or a nonprofit or something like that, a lot of times things are smaller operations. And so the worry that the word is getting out, it may not be getting out in those same big, it may be on Handshake, it may not be. So I think look in the unexpected places too, and be willing. I'm thinking back on my internship. I interned with the Zank at OU. I also interned at the Baldwin Center in Pontiac, and that was a really cool experience. And those were both really short, but I think don't be afraid of it's only like an 8-week internship or a 6-month internship, because I still am in contact with the editor at the Zank. In fact, I've gotten other jobs of being beta readers for different books and stuff like that, just from that like 6-month virtual internship that happened. So again, just keep an open mind and look all over the place. Don't shut anything down before you're asking the questions and being curious about it.
That's so wonderful. Thank you. And I just want to add, yes, social media is a way to find jobs and to link up with people, to network, to become friends, to learn. But it's also just a job to people, English and creative writing majors end up getting, because that stuff takes a lot of time and energy to run, and people like me don't want to do that, right? Like, I don't want to, I used to, for briefly, I ran our creative writing social media site, and I was like, I am done with this. I don't want to, I'm addicted enough to social media. I don't want to do it for a living. And so people hire people to do that so I can connect anybody who's interested in that, who's like, I do social media. Oh my God, then you can do it. So Kiana has given some more responses to, and all this is really great information. The job fairs, which and you would for sure go to Handshake. You would for sure walk yourself right into the Career Center, sit down with the counselors, talk to them, go to the job fairs, go to Kiana's stall and say hi. I mean, it's so informative that several people, that like a lot of our people, here tonight have overlapped in different jobs, right? That tells you that OU has a great reputation, and that is something you can build on. Brian.
Just a thought to throw out, and I'm not sure if any of the other individuals on the panel here have experienced informational interviews, which I think can be very powerful. Like if you as a student are aware of an organization or a company that really intrigues you, even if there are no jobs posted, there can be a lot to be gained by reaching out to someone who seems to be accessible at that company and asking if there's someone at the organization that you could interview to learn more about what that industry is like, what their career path has been. Because we, as more mature or older adults, we love talking about ourselves and what we've done. And as a teacher, I had students reach out to me and ask to interview me for various courses or things they were doing. As a therapist now, I've had students at OU, at Wayne State reach out to me. And I have reached out to other professionals to say, can I talk with you about what you're doing? Because I want to learn more about this. And I don't think that anybody has ever said no to those requests. And you're not doing it to try to get a job, but it can be a great, Annie talked about building the network. It can be not only a great way to build a network, but to leave a lasting impression so that when a job maybe becomes available, that person that you had maybe sat down with 14 months ago was like, God, who was that young lady that came in and asked me all those questions? Oh, I think I have her name somewhere in an email. And they might reach out to you. So a personal connection is huge in that way. So just a plug for informational interviewing.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I've heard of other folks doing this, and it seems like the coolest thing, and it makes me just want to go out and do it to everyone because it's so interesting. But yeah, so students, holy crap, people love to talk to you and tell you what they're doing, and it makes them feel good. So never feel like it's wrong to reach out and ask, because the only thing that will happen that's negative is that they might not email you back, right? And that's because people are busy, not because they're dissing you. So just remember that if you have reached out to someone and they haven't gotten back to you, maybe send a very polite follow-up email 2 weeks later. And that way, and then they'll be like, oh my God, this person really has their ducks in a row. They are not just leaving this thread unpulled. So this is all strategy that you need to implement, and that you, again, most important thing of all, trust yourself, reach out, take a moment, think, ask questions. Even if someone brushes you off and says, oh, well, I don't have time for that, and they say something, then just say, oh, well, thank you so much, because that insight you gave me is really helpful. Whatever it was, because people like to feel like they did well. I mean, this is why all your goofy professors are always like, ask me questions. Anybody else?
One quick last one I'll add as far as job search places and finding out about jobs opportunities is going specific into like listservs and trade type things. So I, thinking about like the writing centers field, if you go onto the IWCA website, the International Writing Centers Organization, they have a job posting. Things it's not always the most updated, but it's got postings. And then if you want to kind of keep digging deeper into things like that, find out the niches that are your areas, find out about those professional organizations and get either a membership with them or listservs. Listservs are free. You don't have to pay for a membership. And then of course your email gets spammed, but there's going to be job opportunities in those emails.
That is such a great insight. And if you would just put that that website or the title of the writing center, just because every time you can find, I think Rachel had put up, I don't remember what it was called, but it was the Public Society of America, the Detroit chapter. And another thing that you can do, for example, is become a member of the Sigma group, which is the English Honors Society. And they have a big presence throughout the country, and you can become a member of them and then start to network within that database. It's basically all the really, happy, geeky, nerdy English and creative writing people. They go to those things. And some of our students have also gotten published through Sigma Honor Society. They have gotten scholarships. They have won contests. So it's worth the $47 one-time payment for life, membership for life, because then you're part of the Sigma Society. It's not really a society, it's an honor society through Oakland, but you're then part of this larger community too. So it's for sure worth it. All these weird groups that sound kind of off-putting because you don't know what their names mean, just use your research skills and explore what they are, because you don't know where it'll take you. And that goes back to what everyone is saying about keep an open mind. Use your curiosity and your ability to sort of dive deeper than a surface website to find out what's going on with these different organizations. Okay, this is so helpful. Anybody else have any more questions? All right, so please feel free. I'm going to put my email again in the chat. Please feel free to write me if you have any questions after this event is over. I am always here. Rachel is always here to answer questions, to be a cheerleader, to help you connect to internship opportunities, people that we know who might be doing the same kind of work that you're hoping to do, because Rachel and I have been here for a long time. We know people, as as these folks have all attested, right? So reach out to us, because all we can do is tell you what we know, but we want to. So never be shy. Don't waver and feel like, oh, they don't want to hear from me. We want to hear from you. We're here for you. Both ways, here and listening. Okay. All right. So I think, Rachel, anything else that you can think of?
Nope, I think we covered everything.
So if you're processing and you come upon thoughts, shoot us emails and we can continue this conversation later. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panel. You guys were amazing.